Hello, Allie. I don't know how to fix this. Hold on. It's right on my fucking eye. Better. Okay, so it doesn't get. I'm sorry about the light that's in my eye, but it's providing the light for my face. It doesn't get more vintage than filming this video for you on photo booth from 2007 on this 2007 laptop. So I hope this looks like old school YouTube. 2007 is the year that YouTube started, I believe. If not 2007, then 2006. I'm pretty sure it's 2007. Yeah, so this should look like an original YouTube video, because this is how it all began. Yeah, I filmed you a video a long, long time ago, like 3 weeks ago, and I have it, but the laptop has pretty much permanently, it's slipped into a coma, and I'll be sending it to the laptop hospital soon, but, you know, I no longer have that video, which is too bad, but also, it was just making me feel kind of weird seeing it, because like immediately after I filmed that video was when I was like walking around and that guy like grabbed my butt, and so now whenever I watch that video I'm like, oh, that's weird, that because I keep thinking about it. So I edited it a little bit, but now it's like I can't access it right now because the computer's not working, so I'm just gonna like make you this quick one, and probably from now on, because I don't see like a video editing thing on this computer. I'm gonna have to get a new one, but for now when I make videos they're just gonna be like this, which you should be super excited about, because that means that I can't edit them. They're just gonna be this, so they're gonna probably happen a lot faster, but don't quote me on that, you know, don't expect them to be faster, but I'm gonna give you like a quick rundown of what I said in the last video, and then I think that's it. Let's see, I'm pretty sure I insulted you because you said you hadn't seen a lot of Peter Pan movies, which hurts my heart because Peter Pan is one of my favorite things in the world. I'm very, 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 very close to all the Peter Pan things. And you're saying you're gonna have like a day when you're gonna watch a bunch of Peter Pans. This is all like refreshing your memory, I'm sure. But yeah, and I recommended some Peter Pan movies for you to watch, but I think you should just discover them on your own. And I have some that are like kind of the more obscure ones that I can like, get my little feet, bring over to your house sometime and we can watch if you're ever in a Peter Pan mood. I have the one that's like the stage version, or not stage version, sorry, like the live ABC version before Allison Williams did it most recently on ABC, so it's like 1965, I want to say, and it's a woman playing Peter Pan again. Can't remember her name, but she's like really famous for playing Peter Pan, a really famous actress from the 60s, I can't remember. There's a really, really, really good silent movie version of it, that I have to like dig up from somewhere. It's beautiful. And there's a really good British like mini series about it, and like mini series meaning like a movie length. It's like 2 really long episodes, and that's like the whole series. So it's basically like a movie, but they call it a mini series. I don't know. It's a British thing. Anyway, that's awesome. But if you're gonna watch Peter Pan, obviously the greatest one you can watch is the 2007 live action one. 2007, hey, 2007 is the theme of this video. The live action one with Jeremy Sumpter, who's so hot. Hot then, hot now, hot. I feel no uncomfortableness, discomfort watching that movie now and still thinking he's hot, even though he was like 14 in that movie. Whatever. Jeremy Sumpter's hot. Hot, hot. Hottie, hot, hot. And obviously watch Finding Neverland. I can't believe you haven't seen Finding Neverland. Douche. The whole time you were in that Peter Pan play, I kept thinking about the movie Finding Neverland. I think you would like appreciate it a lot, and you'd get a lot of references now that you've been in that play. So watch it. It's fucking so good. What else? You asked me what I was reading right now. At the time I was reading an autobiography of Mindy Kaling that I was just in Target and I walked by it and I was like, oh, well, I gotta have that, because Mindy Kaling is kind of like, she's someone who I like look to very often whenever people are kind of like, oh, you're never gonna make it, because Mindy Kaling's always like, her whole thing is like, yeah, people told me that I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted to do because I didn't fit the stereotype of what you needed to be successful in this industry, but I did it anyway. And she's super badass and I love her, so I was reading that. Right now I'm reading this compilation of comic books, Weird Science comic books, not to be confused with Weird Science, the movie from the 80s with Anthony Michael Hall, which is so good. I haven't seen that movie in 10 years. That occurred to me the other day. I used to love that movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, so I look forward to rewatching Weird Science sometime. It's great. I think it was the first movie I ever saw with Anthony Michael Hall. I'm pretty sure it was. So good. And it might have been like the first of those kinds of 80s movies that I saw, like the 80s teen movies. I feel like it was. I love it. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so it's like a combination of comic books, and these comic books are, there's like Weird Science, there's Tales from the Crypt, there's suspense, things like that, and they're all written by this guy, William Gaines, who started this comic company called EC Comics, which is kind of like DC Comics, but it's, well, so DC Comics is Detective Comics, and it, like, predated EC Comics, but then you have, so EC Comics is, like, entertaining comics, and so he started it, and then they were, like, horror comics, and they were the first of their kind ever, and they got a whole lot of, like, backlash during the communist Red Scare, because people thought that, like, the reason why children would turn into communists or become delinquent was because of horror comic books, and they would show images of, like, people being decapitated in these comic books, just, like, really grotesque things, which are actually, you know, the artwork is brilliant, the stories are brilliant, and it's always, the theme of the comics was always, like, bad guys would get their comeuppance at the end, so if you were, like, a shit person, like, at the end you would, like, get it back, like, get threefold, you know. Tenfold is the expression, my bad. Like, so, that's, like, bad guys would get their comeuppance, that's how it is. So it's, like, it's kind of like a, it's not, like, good people just being, like, shit on, is what I'm saying. But anyway, not the point. So, during Communist Road Scare, there's a really, really famous child psychologist who writes about why these comics are the reason for delinquent behavior, and encourages people to, like, burn them, and it was, like, one of the most famous book burnings at the time, and I think one of the first ever comic book burnings. People would buy them like mad and burn all of them, so, it's really amazing that people even have compilations of them now, just because so many of them are burned, but all of the originals survived at the place where they were made, so then the person who made the comic books made, like, these huge books full of all of the originals that came out a couple years ago. I own one, and then I found that the library here has a bunch of them, so I've been reading them. I'm a huge fan. But anyway, and then he was put in front of the House of Un-American Activities, which, if you know anything about McCarthyism or Andrew McCarthy, that was, like, when people were accused of being a communist, they'd have to go before them and say, you know, here's why I'm not a communist. A lot of actors were put before them, and so most of them would be like, yeah, I'm not a communist, I love America, and just a whole bunch of stuff, and promise not to do a bunch of things that they were doing, so they wouldn't have their careers ruined, because if you refused to participate, which a lot of really badass actors and directors did, they were like, fuck you, America, I'm not a communist, and you're a dick for even making me come to these committees. Like, if you did something like that, then you would be blacklisted, and then it'd be really, really hard for you to work another day in Hollywood. But anyway, William Gaines goes before the committee, basically says, like, oh, fuck you. But, so, I don't remember why he wasn't blacklisted. I think that they, like, what happened was they put a ban on a bunch of comic books. This wasn't meant to turn into the story, but I think it's interesting. Anyway, so they put a ban on comic books, like, the industry of comic books, and you had to have a seal saying that you were approved by the government. They would read through and make sure it was appropriate. So it wasn't just these horror comics that were being censored, now it was comic books in general. So, like, superhero comics had to be a certain way, they had to be, like, super American and super, like, the good guy is America, and just, you know, like, very, very appropriate, lots of censorship, no violence, no swearing. There was a whole list of things that you couldn't have in comic books anymore, because they were so afraid that kids would become just horrible people and delinquents and drama. And so that William Gaines kind of refused to do that, because he would lose the essence of all of his comics, so he refused, and it's Tales from the Crypt and Suspense Comics and Weird Science and all of these comics under that umbrella kind of, like, ended. They stopped being made, and then he made another comic that became really successful, which is, like, known now as Mad, which turned into Mad TV on Comedy Central, and so, like, that's a huge industry, and it was just, like, making fun of politics and just, like, a satire on what was happening in the news and in Hollywood and stuff like that. So he was still able to, like, kind of fuck with the government, but, like, he was able to, like, finance it all himself and produce it all himself at that point. And then in the 90s, fans of him and of his comic books who'd, like, grown up being kids in the 50s and 60s reading them, decided to make a TV show on HBO based on the comic books, and so that TV show is Tales from the Crypt, which is one of my favorite things. I grew up watching Tales from the Crypt, and I love it so much. So that's how I knew about these comic books, from watching Tales from the Crypt, and it's great. And so that's what I'm reading right now. At Free Comic Book Day, one year, I think I was like 11, I would go to Free Comic Book Day and just like take all of the comics and then like only read the ones that looked interesting, but I would just take them all anyway because hey, they're free. Free Comic Book Day, by the way, is the first Saturday in May every single year in any comic book store. So go to Free Comic Book Day. It's really, really awesome. But anyway, I got a comic, never read it because, I don't know, like it didn't look that interesting. And then years down the line, I think I was like 17 when I like picked it up again, I realized it was an original Tales from the Crypt comic book. And I just about cried. I don't know why it got put in the mix, but yeah, I found myself with the original, and that was the first Tales from the Crypt comic book I ever read, and that was great. So yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. I love it a lot. I don't remember what else you asked me. I think you said we should like give each other like recommendations for like musics, books, movies. You said something about like, oh, we shouldn't do book recommendations because that would probably like, are we actually gonna sit and read books? I think we still should, because, like, why not? You could add it to your list when you have free time. Or, like, look it up anyway. And, you know, it would be better than book recommendations, actually. It would be, like, poem recommendations. So then, you know, it doesn't take as long to read, and then it's still kind of, like, literary. And I guess if I had to give you a poem recommendation, it would probably be Your Little Voice Over the Wires Came Leaping by E.E. Cummings, which is a poem I had to do a graphic art project on in 5th grade, and I guess the poem resonated with me so much that I still remember all the words to it to this day. I didn't even try to memorize it, but it just, I guess, had so much fun doing the project. But yeah, so Your Little Voice Over the Wires Came Leaping, E.E. Cummings, and if you get time to read the history of E.E. Cummings, he's so cool. They talk about how during the war he was, like, arrested because they thought that he was sending out secret code to like the enemy because of how his poems were written, because he writes them weird with like words over like here and over here and over here, and they thought it was like some secret enemy code. I don't know, it's really cool. So that would be my poem recommendation. My movie recommendation was going to be Frank, and then I was going to say something like, oh, and then because you made a video saying that you were going to watch Frank, I think, and I was going to be like, oh, well, I want to know what you thought of Frank, but we kind of had that whole discussion, so I don't know what I would recommend now. Let me like pop it in my Netflix. But if I had to recommend a song to you, I really, really like R.E.M. Not just like, I've always loved R.E.M. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. Of my list of like 6 favorite bands of all time, R.E.M. is definitely on there. But recently I've been listening to them even more, and I listened to all of their albums today, and I listened to all of their albums yesterday, so I've now listened to all of their albums twice in a very short amount of time. I'm a very, very, very big R.E.M. fan. And there's so many great songs by them. I don't know what songs you would know and you wouldn't know. Certainly, like, Losing My Religion is a great song by R.E.M., but that's one of, like, the most famous songs in the 90s, so you probably know that. What's it called? It's The End of the World as We Know It is a great one. Again, really famous song from the 90s, probably know it. And along with, I'm trying to think, I like the song Shiny Happy People. I don't know if you would actually like it, but I like it a lot. Because I feel like it really embodies, like, when I think of what I miss about living in the 90s and why I want it to still be the 90s, I think of that song. I think of me in my room with, like, I feel like 80s homes had a lot of, like, pastels, and 90s homes were, like, in pastel recovery, so you still had a lot of pastels, but as opposed to it being, like, light creamy pastels, you had a lot of, like, reds and yellows and blues and just, like, colors like that. And that's just how, when you see something that looks really 90s, it's just really colorful like that, but, like, in that specific, like, color scheme. That's at least what my, like, childhood bedroom looked like in the 90s, and that's what Shiny Happy People reminds me of, just, like, that bedroom. And just the sense that I had being a kid growing up in the 90s, I don't know. I mean, like, I know that I was only 4 when they ended, but 4 years is a long time, and so I guess if I had to recommend a song, it would be that. And I don't know if I have, like, a movie recommendation right now, because I have, like, a huge list of movies that I want to watch with you and Marisona and Lauren. And I don't want to recommend any of those, because I want to be there for them. So, because I've been sitting around thinking of all the movies that I want you guys to like see it, and I want to watch with you. So it's hard for me to think of one that's not that one. I guess I did say the Peter Pan one, so that'll be my movie recommendations, all the Peter Pan ones that I said. I can't remember what else you asked about. I think that's it. Cool. Well then, we should just like come up with a new recommendation thing every week too. Like we should do these recommendations just because like I think that they're fun. And be like, I don't know, this week favorite, or recommend an artist, or recommend a plant to look up because it's a cool plant. I don't know, things like that. They interest me. Random quirky things like that. We'll discuss. So anyway, here's this video that you've been waiting for months. And I'm sorry I didn't make it sooner, but 99% of the reason was technical difficulties. Actually, it wasn't like not having time. It was really just because I didn't have a way to make it. But now I do. And here it is. And okay, see you later. I don't know what to ask you. I guess you asked me a question at the end of your video. I don't have like a question for you, but it's been a really long time since I've made it, so I'm sure you could think of things to talk about. You don't need me to ask you questions. So okay, later. Bye, Allie. Later.